Welcome to Real Estate Rocknrolla Top End Peak Performance Professionals, or aspiring to be. You might be a salesperson that's looking to move into the stage of momentum. You might even be one that's still in the stage of building traction, building market share, and then hopefully looking to take it one step further and cruise along. So to begin with, we're going to look around the traps and see where we're going. Those that are all the way back at foothold, sales associates of, if you're a real estate rock star on here right now, you might have a sales associate working in tandem with you today. So the subject matter, when we do get to it, the theme of today's session is, this being session 8, in momentum, is assistant, ANT, or assistance, ANCE. Which are the two that you need? Do you need? Well, I've always believed that, it takes a unique salesperson that can run down the path of having an assistant, because that throws you into the grips of management. But I do believe that we could all do with a little assistance, provided it is built around the premise of leveraging your productivity, and we'll get to that in just a moment. So just to begin with, back to what our sales associates, those of you that actually already have an assistant or assistants, whether it be in one of the two, what's happening back there at the property careers or PC3M level, when we're meeting with a lot of these sales associates, whether it be on a one-on-one basis if they're working inside of a team, or in collectively with their real estate rock stars. The theme this week has been basically around, the back end of lockdown and how we stay on top of that. So if you're basically a real estate rock and roller and you're wanting to communicate with your sales associate, can I say that you need to put a lot of emphasis on what we refer to acronym SEL, the sales inquiry log. Certainly, we've had lockdown in a lot of real estate markets. I mean, New South Wales, where I am right now, and you can see by the beard that I've grown during lockdown and the hair that's sort of growing wildly, that we're now in week 11, and it would be easy if you were in New South Wales to kind of throw you, and certainly in Greater Sydney, to throw your hands in the air and just go, this is all too much, and give up. But I warn against that. In fact, rather than looking at this as an adverse situation, I'm openly saying that the opportunity is rife right now, because the vast majority of agents have looked at this period of time and saying, well, until lockdown clears, I might take a mini break, I might take a holiday. I'm not saying that you're not going to be afforded the time to take advantage of just that and have some time off. But insofar as your interests go, from a market share, from a real estate sales perspective, I caution heavily against disengaging and then working on the fact that when those restrictions lift and you come back to the market, that you can just pick up where you left off. In fact, I was talking again with a lot of our people in Sales Trainer Mentor, and I'll get to that in just a second, around this same subject matter this morning. And what becomes important right now is that you're making the connection, that you are keeping a lot of these on board. And look, I'm the first to say, especially in these areas, as I say, in New South Wales, we're in 12 weeks of lockdown. Go down to Victoria, their lockdown is way, way, way more draconian, in that they can't show properties, they cannot even do listing presentations, certainly can't get photographers in. So it is pretty difficult to function down there at all. Having said just that, we've got one of our real estate rock stars, Ange Seralis, and of course his sidekick, sales associate Stuart Hatfield. They've managed to not only sell a property that the buyer hasn't physically been to and inspected, but also list that seller's property online without even shaking their hand after the deal's been done and get it on board. So there's lots of things that we're doing in and around that, certainly with Property Marketer, those of you that are in lockdown and suffering it. But you've also got to assume, even though where you've come out, so a crossover there in NZ, I think it was only just this week that you've come down from beginning at level 4, then level 3, and now down to level 2, which is kind of a relaxing, and we're always back to normal and back into the offices and that sort of thing and taking buyers out. But you have to assume that at any stage we could go back to that same environment. And if you've learned anything from what's actually taken place, you need to understand that the beat goes on and those obstacles, we're learning how to get around them, and that, you know, listings and sales still need to occur, despite the fact that the attitude starts to waver somewhat. So I just say it's really important that you're coming across and you're understanding that you've got to make the connection, but make the connection on the right premise. I'm not diluting the fact that the relationship that you want to be having with active property sellers is a commercial one, because at some stage you're going to sit down and discuss the virtues of listing with you, and you don't want to be subjected to listing discounts and or fee discounts. But the nature of the conversation that you're having with them has to be one where you're not seemingly coming at them and pushing or forcing them into something that they're not going to be happy with. So I openly say that, you know, rather than the typical manner, and this is what I'm teaching the sales associates, that most agents jump in and they seek to qualify. One of the first mistakes they make, of course, is that they're calling just the fresh inquiry, discarding it after making some initial qualification questions and moving on. And I've got to say, a lot of those qualification questions are quite cheeseball, where they say, look, do you have a property that you're looking to sell? First of all, can I come down and give you an idea on price? If you look at that, the pattern that follows is qualify the person first, look at that source. Once you've actually calling them up, move straight into, do you have something to sell, or you're selling yours, or will you be selling yours? Straight into, can I come down and give you an idea on price, and throw your hat into the ring around a contentious issue where, quite frankly, you really can't win. Or you may win from time to time, but if you do win, you're either maybe overinflating or giving assurances around price, which is fraught with its own dangers. I know the market has been so good over the last few years that you can get away with that, but it's not something that's going to work longevity wise anyway. And then moving to the motive. And right now I'm seeing a lot of agents saying that I'm talking to sellers that are saying that they won't put their property on until they find something to buy. And to my mind, this is because we are putting too much energy into get down, talk about price, get it on the market, and not enough discussion is being had around form. You know, in the first instance, it's not centric to their motives and on what it is they're trying to do. So it's not demonstrative of showing any care. And then, of course, you know, it's not really conducive to them thinking that you are interested in what they're trying to do. And this just creates a disconnect, and we just look like pariahs, really, that are just, you know, really self-centered and what we're about. So I say it's very simple, and this is what I'm teaching those sales associates. In the first instance, focus on qualification and then move to identifying their reason for selling, the motive. And the questions I throw to them are these: you know, where are you coming from? Then if whatever inquiry they've made, and this is around the SEL, the sales inquiry log, were you looking at this property, or did you call about this property, or did you attend the open house on this one because you were comparing it to your own in researching the market, or were you looking at this to buy? So where are you coming from moves to where you're going to. The conversation is now centric around that. And from that, the opportunities will raise their head for you to offer advice on the best way to tackle it. So for argument's sake, if somebody says to me that we have to find something to buy first before we put ours on the market, I then just move to, well, what happens if you do find something? What do you do then? And then, of course, that leads to maybe you'll end up with 2 properties, or, you know, what if you find it and at the same time another buyer finds it and they're at the ready and they can commit sooner than you, and the terms and conditions they can offer are more favorable? What? And then you can start to slide in the advice. When you move to advice, then comes discussion around product. And then I believe that rather than solicitation of the listing presentation, you can move into invitation. And that's been hugely helpful. One of the things that I spent a lot of time in role playing, one of it to our other real estate rock stars, Lincoln Tatnall up there at Coronis, and working with him, Courtney Fern. And yesterday we spent a lot of time in her training in just reiterating how to get through or tackle the sales inquiry log that they have. And they have a considerable number of inquiries that come through. And if they process just that alone, being one of the big three, I'm absolutely certain that we can fulfill our achievement, which I'll talk to you about today. But they are on a path of a listing presentation every single day and are doing that successfully. And between the two of them, we're aiming to come out of this month or at September at somewhere around 15 or 16 listings. So again, we say, you know, it's just that pattern that you need to follow. In and around sales trainer, mentor, we're spending a lot of time focusing on the listing presentation, or should I correct myself and say developing a listing education, one that permits you to not only list property, but also successfully secure those property on the terms and conditions of your choosing. What does that mean? Discount free, and certainly without having to entertain any concessions around marketing, investment, or the otherwise. In fact, the polar opposite, and having them invest across to you. And we're now having success with listing presentations being done on Zoom or remotely. This will precede us moving that into Listing Pad, and you being able to utilize the platform, the native application that sits inside your an iPad, and run your listing presentation remotely across to property sellers. And no better example of this than one that I just did this week, and I believe Sean's on here right now, where he not only secured the listing online, but he also was able to get that seller to agree to an undiscounted fee that he's actually moved a little higher in line with what they typically charge, and no resistance all the way around, because the education was one where he found, in some discussions I had with him this morning, if you jump onto the Listed Sell Army, you'll see recording from one of our meetings that we have regularly inside a Sales Trainer Mentor, and him explaining to me that he even found himself the way through, you know, the seller is agreeing to list with him, and he's not even had discussion on price and what he thinks that property is worth, comparatively speaking. And this is where the confidence kicks in and everything starts to work, you know, very well and very effectively. Doing the same sort of thing with Ange and Stuart. We've been spending a lot of time on the listing presentation, getting their version, getting my version, and honing it over. This reminds me again, even when I'm talking to sales professionals that have been in the game for a while and looking to move into momentum, but never forget the value of training, never forget the power of positive reinforcement. I find that everyone enjoys learning something new. They don't enjoy the monotony of repetitiveness and just honing something over and over again till it becomes not only internalized ad nauseum, but it also becomes, reaches the point where you're just tired of it. But that's when you start to know it, and that's when you can then start to move to doing it. So I say it's always about see or hear now. Yeah, so I've seen it and I've heard it, to then moving to I know now, and that's secured with training. And then it finally moves into the last space, which is do now. And that too becomes very important. Now, of course, across to Real Estate Rockstar, and what we're focusing on this month, those of you that are directly in contact with me in training, is the best month ever. So you're trying to, you know, being September, being on the back of lockdowns and everything else, that we get into that space where we are moving towards double-figure listings. If you jump back to the last recording we did of Real Estate RocknRolla, I talked about moving into the space and how you do that on double figure listings. So, you know, I say it's a very simple analogy. You just need to put all of your energy and focus into understanding that listing always comes before selling. Put all of your energy into leveraging off the front end of listings all the way through and at the back. And that is, of course, with prospecting. Again, you should be looking to pre-sell. Certainly, if you're in a unit where you've got a sales associate in assistance, that you are teaching that sales associate what to do and say about, again, pre-selling you before you get down to do those listing presentations and making it work successfully. And there's no better avenue to be doing that than in and around accolades. And this is one that I share with Ron Wesh over there in RocknRolla in New Zealand, and Vivian Matthews, which is his sales associate, and they're working together. And I showed them how to get those accolades coming in as almost commonplace, and then to feed them back out and making sure that they permeate most of the communication you are having in and around sellers. So it's important, just coming back in property careers, that sales associates are keeping in communication all the way through up to lockdown, making sure that they're demonstrating care in and around the motive. As we come out of lockdown, you're going to have people coming across. And of course, you're going to luck in and get lots of people that are seeing, because you're engaged and you're actually offering things, lots of good advice without any condition, that you're going to have those lucky presentations where people are saying, well, get me on the market right now. Same with those accolades, be pushing those out there, be very much aware that, you know, I know that there's some rating sites where you've got Rate My Agent, Google Plus, and like something. The thing I don't like about, in particular, Rate My Agent in the capacity of prospecting, those of you who know me know that I'm very much pro having any form of accolades out there, but I don't like the use of those platforms in terms of prospecting, because if you're utilizing those to prospect, you are also drawing to that prospect's attention your competitors, and I don't see any need to do that. Whereas with our platform inside of accolades, you are sending that recommendation out independent of agents. And then finally, property market. I'd like to welcome a lot of people across to this. We've got Vasco Horder over there in Perth, and of course Lorraine Dove. So they've got their property marketer in terms of their prospecting templates and everything out there in play. Vasco's revisiting, breaking into a new market, so he's going all the way back to foothold. And yesterday we talked about the frustrations that pertain to that. That's going to be very much related to the subject matter of assistance, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment. But we're also utilizing in property marketer the two-view platform, particularly those that are in a state of lockdown. So again, back to Ange, and he's the one that sold that property without the buyer looking at it, then listed the owned buyer's property. And we're getting them to utilize their own iPhones to take photographs that we can put into the two-view platform, or even video for that matter, and get it out. Yes, it's amateurish. Yes, it's not as good as getting professional photography and or videographers, but it's better than nothing, and it allows that engagement to continue on between prospective buyers, notwithstanding the fact that they may have to wait till the lockdown arrangement occurs. But again, if you're seen as being active around this, and this can work in lieu with a seller having confidence in you and agreeing to list the property, even though it might be in an off-market arrangement until those lockdown restrictions have lifted. And also we want to be looking at lots of other things in terms of the soft contact. So don't forget, in case you have forgotten, to be jumping on and making sure that you are sending the property seller's research guide. I know that right now with Nick Saparovich, who I hope to have on here soon, talking to you real estate rock stars about his, rise, fall, and then re-rise back into the mainstay of the real estate arena. And he has with him working not just what we call a blue PA or blue sales associate, I should say, in Hannah Saparovich, his niece or cousin, I think, but I think it's his niece. and she's doing a magnificent job, having had some experience in real estate and coming from the property management field directly into sales. And of course, Liz, who he's got on board, and she's taking care of most of the admin and back end and database management and all that sort of stuff. So a great little unit, and they are producing like never before again and doing a sensational job of that. So they're the things that we're looking at to bring into with Property Marketer, you know, as we get closer to the launch of Prospector 4, but Prospector 3 is working just a treat right now. And let's move to the mainstay subject of today's discussion, and that is, of course, assistant or assistants. Now, the first thing I caution you about as a high-end performer is that, you know, everything has to have a correlation. And then look, there's only two choices that you are offered in boosting your productivity when you are at the crossroads with reaching what we call wheel spinning or optimum level. And that is, you either get more people on board purely with the idea of becoming more efficient, so achieving more with less, or the other choice you get is to spend more time doing it. Now, I don't know if you noticed me cringe when I said the other choice, but those of you that are listening probably couldn't see that, but you might have detected it in my voice. I just don't like the idea of working more hours. One of the things that just deters me completely, again, yeah, I do put a lot of hours into what I do because I love it, but I do it by choice, not by necessity. And I must say that if I felt that I was being cornered into having to work lots and lots of hours, that I wouldn't enjoy that. I always have the choice of doing it, and to me it becomes fun. But if you want to achieve more with less, or then you want to move to greater efficiencies, well, then you do need assistance. And part of that assistance, if we go all the way back, was in the evaluation process when we looked at those 4 questions. What are the tasks I love and would do for nothing? What are those that I do under sufferance? What are those that I absolutely loathe? And then finally, what are some of the things I should be doing? So the trade-off that we always had was, if we could eliminate the tasks that we absolutely loathe, this would allow us to improve or increase the volume or the production on the tasks that we absolutely love doing, get some stability around there. Then we could get rid of those ones that we're doing under sufferance and start to do more of the stuff that we like doing. Well, of course, the introduction of assistance is the initial elimination of those tasks that we loathe. And to begin with, what we need to do is give them, I guess, a language that allows us to understand the functionality that sits around that. So often I see someone get an assistant in without recognizing or realizing that they've now thrust themselves into a disposition of management. Even worse, if that salesperson has a propensity for some degree of perfectionism or expecting people to do things their way exclusively, you can also be poor in management in that you kind of shut off any initiative that assistant might have, which you don't want to do. In fact, you want to encourage initiative. You want to encourage that assistant to take ownership of certain things, and this creates a more harmonious disposition. So the thing that we're looking for in bringing or introducing assistants, and I think that needs to be the primary key. I'm not discounting the advent of bringing in an assistant, but I am saying that if you bring in a one-on-one assistant, you then have the dual responsibility of not only producing, but also managing that assistant around your expectations. So it is that the first and foremost, you want to start with a language and an understanding of that functionality. So you will have seen, or you will have noticed, that we focus on 4 color codes: red, blue, black, and green. And we've even allocated these in some ways to each of our 4 product offerings and our 4 phases of PRöSPECTOR. and moving through, I guess, the progressive lifespan of real estate sales. So we say that red functionality is that of, it has a bias toward administration, although it can be tagged across into prospecting in the degree of foothold, which I don't want to overcomplicate it at the moment. But the first thing we look at is tasks that are red are those that are necessary but non-income producing. Totally necessary but non-income producing. And of course, these tasks will have an almost immediate bias to administrational tasks. But there are also many tasks in the sales field that are necessary but non-income producing, some of which you can't even allocate, but others even that fall into prospecting. So in the foothold stage of prospecting, we say that there are lots of properties that you are going to prospect and indeed eventually list those properties for sale with no real intention of those properties ever selling. I'm not saying that we're going to prevent that, but we understand that the likelihood of them selling is not very high, especially those ones that we're listing on main roads, some of them through what we call through the fat boy letters, where we're listing properties on main roads, entertaining the idea of the owner putting whatever price they want to put on it, paying for the marketing, even though it's fairly minimal, but it becomes a great position for a sign and helps with our presence. But there are other red tasks that exist, like you can't delegate, for example, eating lunch. Yeah, it's necessary but not income producing, and you have to spend time around that. You can't delegate going to the toilet. Now, they're extreme examples, but there are others that, you know, some of those that fall into that category of tasks that you do under sufferance because you don't believe anyone does them as well as you do. Now, when I look at the performance of most real estate sales professionals, they're lucky if they're spending 10 to 20% of their day in the blue, which I'm going to address in the moment. But clearly about 80% of their time is spent on red tasks. I see us fall for this all the time. There's no better example of this is when someone talks about tidying up or calling their database. See, a large propensity of the time that you're spending on just ringing names and numbers, or even worse, a contact list, is necessary, but it's not income producing because you're talking to people who aren't doing anything at the moment, especially if you're engaging in conversation or dialogue with people that are in a state of dormancy. They may own a property, but they've no intention of moving, and that's a big no-no. We just want to create a language around this so that we all have a conscious understanding of when we're working in the red. Now, for a peak performance professional, of course, you want to spend a minimal amount of time in the red, and wherever you can, you need assistance or an assistant to remove a lot of those onerous red tasks away from you. Yes, they're necessary, but they're not income producing, and your time is better spent elsewhere. We then move to the blue. Blue is direct sales and marketing, essential income producing activity. And yes, we want you to spend a large proportion of your time, the more, the better, but not all of your time there, which you'll soon see in a moment. Again, as I said, salespeople are lucky if they spend about 20%. Some are spending as low as 10% of their time. And quite honestly, if we can just move that up to around 30%, most of them are performing at the real estate rockstar level and better. And 40%, well, that would just be extraordinary if we can get into that mode. Beyond that, there are some people that are out there, but we don't want to spend too much time there because you want to free time up. This, of course, leads me to the black. Black is about sales and marketing. Probably the best analogy that I can give about working on or looking at what's going on the outside. So this could be sales training. This could be planning. This could be goal setting. This could be analysis, any form of self-improvement stuff. And it can even be leisure time. Because when you're in the black, when you've got free time, you're kind of sitting back thinking about stuff. That's important too. I used to say to most of my staff when I was when I was working in the office, I said, if you see me staring out the window, don't disturb me because I'm flat out. I'm spending my time in the black working on something, looking at it from the outside. And then finally, the last color code we have is green. And this is fundamentally for outsourced stuff. So this is where it can be done more practically or more efficiently, but certainly more economically from an outside source. And there's loads of examples of this. I see agents spending an inordinate amount of time on social media where quite often this is much better employing someone to do that social media stuff with your independence, because they will be laser focused on keeping it on productive things rather than just onerous, well, as the name implies, social occasions. I'm not saying don't get involved in it. I'm not saying don't spend time on it if you enjoy it, but let's get your performance to a level where you have the luxury of spending time in and around that. So there's lots of things that we can do around that. And once you understand that language, it then falls to you to actually look at it and say, well, look, do I just need some form of assistance that might be available to me without or negating the need to bring in an assistant? And even if you do, once you understand the color codings, you can have a relationship where you do bring in maybe someone who is a sales associate that can work in the blue, but you could actually garner, or you could get your sales assistant for red tasks from the office administration, and that can be afforded to you with an understanding or some conversation between you and the sales team leader. So this is important that you understand the difference between it. But so often I see salespeople when they're looking, certainly they think the equation is get one salesperson, add an assistant, someone who's going to assist them in either, with the red task or the blue task, whether it be blue with prospecting and direct prospecting around active property sellers. And we kind of say we get 1 and 1 and that equals the power of 2. But so often I see it equaling at absolute best 1.5, because as we bring that assistance in, this just promotes the laziness or the apathy from the sales professional, and they sort of lumber on to that assistant all of the tasks they don't like doing. Go back to that evaluation, those 4 questions, and now we've paid someone to take some of that stuff away, but our productivity numbers don't go forward. If you're going to bring assistants in, certainly if you're going to bring an assistant in and you're going to bring the expense that comes with that, that has to then basically convert into, or it has to flourish by way of increasing the productivity and efficiencies that sit around that. And you can achieve this in a whole range of ways. So, one of the first things that we did, given that Nick Saparovich has brought in not just a blue assistant in Hannah, but also some red assistants, or a red assistant in the form of Liz, then the way to manage it isn't just to get online and talk about all the sales things as it relates to prospecting, listing presentations, managing price expectation and getting buyers through. Suddenly we've got the whole gamut, we've taken it all on, and Nick works with, the agency. So he's basically operating as an independent. So rather than just have the meetings where we're talking to the salespeople, as we do with Real Estate RocknRolla or Real Estate through Real Estate Rockstar in the weekly meetings, they've moved into a sales meeting environment and utilizing the benefits of just treating it as though even though I know it's small, but an entire sales team. And that's working tremendously well. So we're pulling away from that, the to-do list and everything else that goes with it. So the first consideration you need to make is functionality, divvy it up, look at where you're going to need assistance and how you're going to tap that off, and whether or not that's going to improve your overall performance going forward. This is absolutely critical. You need any further understanding on this, please get in touch with me, Mark at realestaterockstar.com.au, or you can reach me on +61 410 592 165. And we can set up a meeting where I can help you with that evaluation, help you with an understanding, so that if you go into the mode of having a direct assistant or even needing assistance, that we improve your overall performance so that you're listing more properties and then ultimately selling more. This gives you peace of mind, and you can calm and move into that space of pure momentum. Hope to see you next week. Hope you've enjoyed the show, and I look forward to seeing you all at the top end of your game, being a real estate rock and roller.